Zoro is an Asura. Wait. Time out, time out. You heard me correctly. Your headphones, your earphones, they weren't busted, they weren't staticky. Your computer, your phone, whatever device you're listening to, your speaker system, your car radio, Bluetooth, that wasn't mistaken. I ain't say he just uses a move. No, I said he is an Asura. Zoro is a demonic god. What's good, y'all? You dub back here again, here in 2022. Let's get it. And on previous installments of what has become the Neo Straw Hat, like, breakdown ish to their characters on this channel, first episode, previous installments, we established that Luffy is a god, an actual deity in the One Piece world. Not just, well, because he is the sun god. No, he's always been a god. And I went into that in that video. I got some pushback, some static. I expect it because, folks be hating on my dog Luffy. They really do. They really don't understand his character. They never have, and some of them never will. They just think he's a simple rebel boy. No, he's always been much more than that. Like I said, he's a god, and he's on a divine journey. And then in the second installment was actually about Usopp is being a demigod, which that video idea actually predated and helped me to figure out this entire theme of the Straw Hat crew. Usopp's a demigod. And believe it or not, I actually got no pushback on that one. I was surprised. People were like, yo, there may be something to what this dread-headed fool is actually saying. Time out. The Straw Hats are actually a legendary mythical crew. Absolutely. Like, when you understand the story for what it is, it helps open your mind. It changes your entire perspective. It helps you appreciate the literal mythology, the mythological journey that Oda's crafted. Because some people say that Luffy's following the hero's journey. Yeah, but no. No. He's not following a hero's journey. I've always found that to be odd. Like, Luffy's not a hero. Luffy just said it himself many times. He's correct. Luffy's a god. And he's assembling a godly crew. You notice how the most specific people join him? You think that's a coincidence? No other series have I seen do this to this level. It's these specific individuals, and he should have more, and yet they're not on. Like Vivi, he could have had Polly, but no. That wasn't good enough for a God's crew. My dog Polly wasn't good enough. The homegirl Vivi wasn't good enough. The Dr. Kreha with her legendary. No, she wasn't good enough. No, we're literally having a mythological crew, which Yamato should definitely join, being that the case. But I digress. So we get into the right-hand man, the unofficial vice captain, the official swordsman of the Straw Hat crew. And this is seeming one of the more on the nose besides what Brook actually is, which we'll deal with in a later video. But people still wouldn't buy it. And I've kind of been on this path just like Zoro's character. In Wano, once again, just like the rest of this, Oda's just full blown opening up everything that I'm saying. He's confirming everything that I'm saying in this arc, which is why this video is very timely, actually. So, Zoro has been on the path of the Asura, especially since he lost to Mihawk. You could say from the beginning, but you could argue no. He's been on the path, and we'll address that. And then there was the whole Skypiea incident, which really put him directly on the path. And then there was his 2-year training, and then post-time skip, why we see such a different Zoro. And why I say he's an Asura's demonic god. Now, I'll do an entirely different video breaking down the path of the Asura. It'll deal with Musashi Miyamoto. It'll deal with Zoro. It'll deal with Akuma from Street Fighter. It'll deal with Tokita Oma, who's called Asura and King and Omega. And I forget if there's Vegeta as well. Excuse me. Vegeta as well. How could I forget? That badass Prince of all Saiyans. Anyways, for those who don't know, I don't hate Vegeta. I just can't stand the fanboys. So, Zoro, all right, first of all, what is an Asura? Now, for all you Buddhists, any Hindu practitioners up in here, I'm no expert in Eastern philosophies and in y'all philosophies. I'm none. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gleaning knowledge. I'm understanding things better from like Bleach, Naruto, One Piece, and more, right? But from what I understand, and also Record of Ragnarok and different stuff, you have the Devas, right? If you will, Luffy would be more like a Deva, right? Zoro is an Asura, the light to the dark, okay? Sun to the moon. And the Asuras are also gods. And this is why I say demonic god, because it's not so much that they're evil necessarily, from what I understand from perspective of good and evil. But again, they are demons, for lack of a better term. From where I come from, they're demonic. Like I said, doesn't necessarily make them evil, but they're a different set of gods. It's like the Aesir and the Vanir, believe I'm saying that correctly. In Norse mythology, it's just a different set of gods. If you know the Thor mythology and Marvel, they kind of play on that a little bit as well. So Luffy has his divine path. Zoro has a divine path too. It's just much different. And if you notice how, and I'm going to parallel Luffy and Zoro for a bit here to show the difference, and then we'll get into obviously Dark King Silver's Rayleigh, what that highlights, what Dracula Hawkeye, Mrs. Mihawk obviously highlights, and more, right? And then we'll his progression as a swordsman. So this is really going to be somewhat of a deep dive into Zoro's character, but not the full extent in the story. There's plenty of other videos done. I know I've talked about it. I know Tekking's done videos. Plenty of other people have done videos, right? So while Luffy being a god on his godly journey and becoming who he is, because see, what a lot of people don't understand about gods is that gods aren't just these almighty necessary beings. It depends on which philosophy, which ideology you get into. Gods aren't, not all gods are living in these heavenly realms. Not all gods are dwelling beyond humans. Depending on what you're specifically talking to, they walk amongst, they interact with mortals. And Luffy, again, I'm going to show this a little bit, but not, we can go back to that other video and we can have discussion in the comment section. But Luffy's ability, like his ability to, which I didn't even mention in that video, emotionally sense everyone, their character, on some Santa Claus shit. A level of omniscience that we've not seen from any other character. A special type of haki that we've not seen from any other character. He legitimately can tell what kind of person you are. What kind of mess is that? That's godly. Again, I mentioned about the fate manipulation and the avoidance of fate. Attracting all kinds of people to him. The most powerful ability on the seas that even Roger didn't have. Him being able to just, with the quickness, master advanced forms of haki. Him mastering his devil fruit at his young age. Him having an indomitable will. Him having conqueror's haki that can mash veterans who, like his grandpa, who could be his grand folks. Just saying, man. Him being the enemy of the gods. Right on the nose, right? Zoro, it's interesting. It's just like his character is obvious yet subtle. Two sides of the moon, right? Frost moon. Month of November, okay? Luffy, I believe, is in May. I believe his birthday is in May, and Zoro's is in November. You think that's not specific? Just like Shanks and Hawkeye's birthdays on the same day? Come on now. Oda's doing this stuff intentionally. So Zoro's path, though, is a path unlike Luffy. You see how Luffy goes out of his way not to really kill? He could have killed Sir Crocodile. He could have killed Joker, but he, in a way, saves. Even though he's not a hero, he's very much a messiah character. Drums of liberation. Become a freedom fighter, even if because it's in his very nature, because he wants to be the freest man on the sea, because he brings joy to people. And in his wake, he liberates nations. He liberates the people. He is a Messiah. Not exactly Jesus, but something akin to that. That's what happens when you're a god, right? Zoro, on the other hand, ain't out here liberating. Zoro, out on the other hand, is out here killing. Straight up. That is what he does. While Luffy doesn't actively kill, even though I think Luffy's caught a couple bodies, Zoro, we know, has killed. On screen, off screen. We know this man, he's to become, again, we won't put the cart before the horse, but y'all know if you read Wano what he's to become, right? So let's, his path, his Buddhist path, again, we'll get to that in a bit more, in a little bit later. But let's start about where the origin of his character is, right? He gets saved by Luffy. Although he lets himself get captured. He literally, and this is where I mean there's a balance of his character. Everything, there's a duality to his character, very much so, yet you'll see. So while I'll say he's a demonic god, the duality of his character. So on the one hand, you have this ferocious monster that Kobe alludes to, going all the way back to, I believe, chapter 3 of the manga. But then we meet Zoro, honorable, looking out for a little girl, so he saves. So on the one hand, you have this monster, but on the second hand, you have a seemingly heroic character, but he's not a hero. You could say maybe an anti-hero, maybe. So you have this character who he's been, was it 9 days? I would say he was gonna try to go for a month, but 9 days he was starving. He got food and he's rugged, and we see his his whole get up. And he said, "Hey, yo, Luffy, just give me my swords." So Luffy somewhat saves him, but unlike the rest of the Straw Hats who needed real saving, Zoro really actually didn't. Nami needed saving. Usopp needed saving. Sanji, in his own way, needed saving twice. Uh, Robin needed saving twice. Let me see. Frankie, in his own way, needed saving, sorta. Um, Frankie's was actually interesting. Um, Brooke, Jinbei was more like a debt, a repaying of debts, and it's interesting with his relationship with Luffy. His not so much saving was more so him and his people. Um, Brooke definitely needed saving. So most of the Straw Hats needed saving. Zoro really didn't. Zoro gets his swords. He's the one that actually defeats. He cuts down Captain X and Morgan. One actually Luffy. This is interesting because that's the only arc antagonist or villain, depending on the situation, that Luffy wasn't the one to defeat, if I remember correctly. Definitely Arlong, Don Krieg, Kuro. Again, Frankie's was a weird situation, but you can say Rob Lucci in a way. Um, Sir Crocodile, and again Rob Lucci. So that tied in with both Frankie and Robin, and Gecko Moria. Then you could say Horty Jones, sort of, and Linlin for Jinbei. So yeah, Zoro was the only one, which is interesting. Which is why, again, there's Luffy and then there's Zoro right here, right? So they go on, right? Nami's journeying with them. You see, Zoro seemingly is almost arrogant in a way, but he's got good reason to. He's never ran into a challenge he could not cut down. His only challenge was when he was a child. And the whole thing about women and inheriting Kuina's will, and again, similar to Luffy, carrying on someone's will, carrying on someone's legacy, like no other Straw Hat has actually. Usopp in his own way kind of does, but no other Straw Hat besides Luffy and Zoro have a strong will, which makes sense when you look at the Conqueror's Haki, when you look at their ambitions and more. So they have these larger than life ambitions, right? Then, which makes sense when you're talking godly type figures. Then we get to Syrup Village, right? We see Luffy do his thing, we see Zoro doing his thing. But it's not so much the fight that I want to look at. I want to look at, well, there's Orange Town, okay? Back it up a little bit. So there's Orange Town, right? And Luffy has his fight, Zoro does his thing. Now, while you could say, it was to showcase what Luffy and Zoro could do power wise, and that they're also the dynamic duo, something about that fight's interesting, right? He's on a dude, and you see now his journey and his path. He's on a dude, and he outskills him with swordsmanship, right? So we see him continuing his path, okay? We see what he's capable of. We see, you know, he's ready to do what is necessary. Then we go to Syrup Village, and, he does what he does. But it's the after the arc. It wasn't Luffy that asked Usopp to join. It was Zoro, which I've always found is one of the most important things, not only for his character but for the crew dynamic. So you have Luffy, you have Zoro, then you have Usopp. This isn't a shade at Sanji, who's not even in the crew yet. But folks will say, well, Sanji's one of the wings of the king. True. But if we were to look at it from an actual leadership perspective, yes, Sanji will help elevate Luffy to that from a power standpoint. But from an actual heart and soul of the crew, it's Luffy, then it's Zoro, then it's Usopp, then it's Nami, then it's Sanji. Some would say Nami's above Usopp, but that's actually not true. And it kind of goes in line with what I said about who will actually have Conqueror's Haki. Okay? Because it's not that Nami and Sanji aren't. They are lesser than. It's not that they're lesser than. It's that their place in the crew is different dynamics. When it comes to on the ship, Nami runs that. When it comes to, support for the king, Sanji's right there with Zoro. But when it comes to the heart and the soul of the Straw Hats, those three characters, not Nami and not Sanji, are actually the heart and soul of the crew. Which is why I can highlight very, very specific character moments for Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp in every single arc that they're in. I mean, huge moments for their character. Nami and Sanji get their moments without a question. But like I said, it hasn't been till Wano that Sanji actually has become really fully embrace his character development. Almost the end of the series. Now we're seeing it with Sanji. We saw his characterization, but up until now we're getting his full-fledged character development in this arc. That's not even an arc focused on Sanji, but it's the culmination, like with the rest of the crew. But in every arc that they're in, Luffy, Zoro, and Usopp actually get huge character moments and actually get huge character development and actually are the focus because they're the most focused godly figures of the crew. They're the figures that hold everything together with the Straw Hats. And without any one of them, you would not have a Straw Hat crew. That is a factual. Without Luffy as a captain, without Zoro being who he is and holding everything together as the Rock, and without Usopp literally banding them all together, there wouldn't be. So we have that, and we see that dynamic established. And Luffy and Usopp have a brotherly relationship. So do Zoro and Usopp. And Zoro is so important because he helps to teach Luffy and Usopp, who's a god and a demigod, how to be men, how to become adult, how to mature. Because Zoro's already at a certain level, which makes it interesting in the whole situation with the next arc, right? So we go to the Baratier, and here's the first full step of his path, his own, if you will, divine path. Different from Luffy, but his own divine path nonetheless. He meets his end goal. Whoa. I mean, a lot of us thought that Zoro should go on, but maybe Zoro dies here. How often do in a story does a character meet his end goal so early? And it was not just the barometer test, that fight. It was his literal end goal. I mean, we can go into the dynamics, and people have done fight breakdowns on that fight. That fight is amazing in retrospect, right? But we see Zoro's ambition. We see his will to continue. He said, his honor, his bushido. We see everything about him as a man. Key point. That whole fight was to literally stop Zoro's journey as a man because he would never complete his journey of who he needed to become as a man. The path of the blade, become one's extension self, the haki release, and everything else. To become the world's greatest swordsman, the world's strongest swordsman, you would have to become something else. Straight from Arrow. Shout out to my dog Green Arrow, Oliver Queen. Will forever be a fan of that series. Did that damn thing. Thank you, Stephen Arnell. But you would have to become something else. Someone else. He would have to become an Asura. So he gets cut down by Hawkeyes, and we see Hawkeyes with the eyes. Some theorize about that. We see his whole vampiric get up. We see him on the ghost casket. We see this. Hawkeyes is where Zoro needs to be, right? In gold. But Zoro still is just human, right? And you can say, well, becoming an Asura, didn't you say he is an Asura? Yes, he is. But the path of self-actualization is what I'm getting on. He had to realize what he actually is. He was thinking he's a man. I'm just a man who's a swordsman. I just cut people down. I just, on the path of the blade. But then he meets his end goal and he sees the gap, the chasm, the gulf, what this really is and really ain't. What it is and what it ain't in this world. So he's like, God damn. What the hell? I just lost, and I just mastered all these techniques. What the? So Mihawk introduces him, Hawkeyes introduces him to the path of the Asura, to the path of self-actualization. And what did he say? He said, come back to me. Right? When you ready, when you actually have completed this path, my pseudo, my now disciple, come back to me and challenge me. Raw no Zoro. So that Luffy didn't step in. Some of the most manly shit you'll ever see. So Zoro's like, all right, bet. Goes to Kokoyashi village, see him banged up, see him bandaged, see him shed off and awake his humanity. Okay. Then you have Logtown, the whole situation with Luffy. We get the Whiskey Peak. Zoro versus Luffy. Luffy versus Zoro, however you want to say it. And the two gods clash. And we see them on par. Time out. Makes you question. And it's the first incident, and even some people are like, was Zoro more powerful than Luffy? No, Zoro wasn't more powerful than Luffy, but Zoro has always been right here with Luffy. Right here. Damn near on par. And we saw the will of Zoro, as we've seen it multiple times. We get to, all right, and then we move, you had Drum Island and that whole shenaniganry. But then we move on to Alabasta. Mr. One Daw's Bones. Now we start to get really Zoro, not just with his sword skill, because everybody looks at the haki, they look at the Rio, the observation haki, the armaments haki, all that good stuff. They looking at, they just look at the external. They look at the exoteric versus the esoteric. Exoteric, the external, superficial understanding versus the esoteric, the deeper, more occult, arcane understanding of it, right? So it was the rhythm of all things, understanding it was really tapping into his, if you will, his third eye, his more divine senses, right? So it's not just enough just to cut things. It's not just enough to cut deeply. It's not. Here was something he couldn't cut. So cut beyond cutting, breaking your inhibitors, almost on some straight up one pan punch man of breaking your limiters, right? You know how Saitama broke his human limitations to become godly in his own way, if you will. Zoro had to do that. This is Zoro's first real thing after his introduction to the path of the Ashura. Is that now I have to break free from my human way of thinking. See, with Zoro, the blade is as much philosophical as it is skill set, as the path of the martial artist, right? So Zoro overcomes that hurdle in Mr. One Da's bones by cutting steel, okay? Choosing what he can cut. And in the process, learning about hockey. Moving on, you get, Long Ring, Long Island, his dynamic, or well, you get to Little Guard and his whole dynamic with Sanji. It's just comedic, and the competition is just great times, great times. It's great for the character, the true brotherly connection that they have. That it's like Zoro has some of the most unique connections I've ever seen with any characters. Like his friendship with Luffy is one of the best dynamics I've ever seen in all fiction. It is glorious. It's just an unwritten and an understanding of men that is just it supersedes. There doesn't even need to be words and dialogue. And then his brotherly connection with Sanji throughout the entirety of the series. And we can even get into Wano later on down the line about how, or we could talk about it at a different point, but you know what I'm talking about, where Sanji asked, hey, Zoro, and Ma said, if I'm not myself, cut me down. Their connection is so deep, it's amazing. Honestly, his connection with every one of the crew, him vetting Robin, him looking out his pragmatic side and whatnot. It's just beautiful, man. It's honestly beautiful. Him looking after Chopper, him just it's glorious, right? So moving on to Skypiea, this is the second aspect of his path of the Ashura, right? To showcase for him to become who he truly is. So he talked mad smack and talked about he doesn't recognize any gods, things like that, so showing an agnostic side to him, right? And this is important because this is Zoro breaking away, still shedding. Pre-time skip is Zoro shedding his humanity. Not for him to become an ultimate monster, but for him to become his divine nature. So Zoro is still thinking like a man, even though he's overcoming his obstacles. Then he meets a quote unquote God, and he can't cut him. Before that, though, he meets the trial of iron with Om. Beautiful fight. Zoro fights are phenomenal, bro. They are truly phenomenal. I ain't gonna lie. Easily some of my favorite fights in the series. That whole battle, that whole him figuring it out, that whole him, you know, the trickery, the whatnot, him overcoming that was beautiful. Him versus Anel, and him not being able to cut him. I guarantee you that had a psychological impact. We saw him get up. We saw his will. We saw his resolve. Hockey Blue. Not only, and then let's move on to Water 7. Him lifting and building was amazing. Um, Water 7, the whole situation with there, the whole situation with Usopp. We see him guiding Luffy as a leader and whatnot. And we see him set down in his resolve, right? Then we see in his lobby, him versus Kaku. Again, one of the best fights in the series. Him versus Kaku is interesting though. You know, he's fought a devil fruit user before, but here we see Yon Toryu. Here we see him. Wait, what does he do for the first time? Awakens his Asura, his Kyotoryu. Kyotoryu. Again, he used, and we see him change his mindset from, his Buddhist path, if you will, right? That's why I say he's on the Asura path. It's his third thing, his fourth, really, because he was introduced to the path zero with Hawkeyes. He overcomes his humanity versus Da's bones. And with the whole Enel and the Ohm situation, he faces his first real hurdle of, you know, his lackey. It's not fun and games. You have to be more. You have to be greater. So now he faces an opponent who supposedly outclasses him in every regard. Physically, none of his shit's really working, who's almost as skilled of a swordsman as he is, etc., etc., who's just eccentric, and he's like, oh, god damn it. So, the animal path, the different stuff is the human elements no. So now, unleash his internal. Now it's becoming who he is. It's the first time he truly releases his Asura. He into where others can actually see it. We'll get to that in a second, a little bit later. But now he's showcasing who he is, right? He defeats Kaku. Move on the whole Sunny situation. Oh, not Sunny. The going married and funeral pyre and all that good stuff, right? You know, him again addressing Luffy, getting him to man up with Usopp. Then we get in the whole thriller bark aspect, and we know, he's affected like Luffy is by the horror, the Perona's ability and whatnot. We see, ores, but then we see, what is it? We're the fourth, fifth point. The next big point, the sacrificial side with Kuma. Him taking on his captain instead of his captain taking on all his burden, him taking it on, and then nothing happening. His bond with Sanji is just glorious in this. Sanji just plays it off. Him knocking off, him taking on, and him willing to give up his ambition for something greater. Like I said, now he's finally coming into he's at the threshold of who his divine self is now. So Kizaru Borsalino talks about how, you're not normal. You shouldn't be taken out. You're built differently. Like Luffy, he has a bounty of over 100 million berry bounties. And we see Uroge. Uroge has the 108, Zoro has the 120. You feel me? And I've talked about their past, their kind of parallel paths, the Ronin and the monk in the past video. Anyways, so, time skip. He gets sent to where his teacher, his again Ingo. So the man who began his path. Now Zoro's crossing the threshold, right? From completely shedding his human inhibitions, his human sense of things, or whatever, to now embracing. And he humbles himself and he said, "Train me." Like, train you who would. He says, "It's not about me, it's about something greater." And Hawkeyes is impressed with his resolve and his humility. And now you see a more post time skip. You see a Buddhist, and his techniques, the 3,000 worlds, and all this stuff. He's now becoming who he's always meant to be, who he always was, by shedding his human limitations and now becoming Nasra. He cuts down the fisherman. He's like, "Yo, yeah, you were beneath me. You are not anything anymore. If this was the old me, you might have had something. If this was me back in Kokoyashi Village, you might have could have done something. But me now, nah, nothing." You get the Punk Hazard whole situation. Monet. His captain struggled. What does Zoro do? Just with his intimidation, just with I always said it was Kankataki. And even going back to Sabudi with, I believe it was Roge had mentioned, others had noticed, like, yo, who is this? Like, and what kind of captain it is that's able to do. He should be the dude, right? And for a man like that to follow, just shows the nature of Luffy, but it also shows the nature of Zoro. And so the whole Monet situation, and that Zoro's become his divine self, right? Now you could say, if he's already become his divine self, why is it? Because even on the path of godhood, like Luffy's learning, there are still levels to this shit. Sure, he's crossed the threshold, so now he's in the divine, now he's in Ashura, but he still is not his final self. He's still not fully self actualized, right? So we go to Dressrosa and the whole thing with Pika. And people will say, "Oh, that was a wasted." No, that was a good ass challenge because Zoro had to use his mind, body, spirit, his soul, everything We see him with his hockey game. We see him with. I've always found it how in the anime the kind of wisps and things of how it is with his blades is very very fascinating, to be honest with you. Anyways, so we see him versus Pika. We see him have to deal with this foolishness. We see him being better and him overcoming that obstacle. Him using Orlumbus's throw. I believe it was Orlumbus's throw, or was it the King? Or was it King Elizabeth? I believe it was Orlumbus. Anyways, we see what he can do, and we see him cut through the armaments hockey. Right? Cool. Now we're in Wano. And Wano has gotten Zoro to fully, almost fully actualize himself. In Wano, what have we seen? Well, on Zo, we saw that, Zoro, his mom was right. He was still talking though as like, yo, why are we taking on two Yonkos? He was talking his practical sense. But we get to Wano, you know, opening up with the whole seppuku. Him apparently cutting down and things of that nature, doing what the Asura does. And then he's like, nah, bro. Cuts and just shows his skill, and he just does that clean cut. Just beautiful in both anime and manga. Just beautiful. Beautiful, right? His battle with Kamazo, with Killer, and we see it without the sword. We see the whole thing with Ryuma. And again, you can go into the whole aspect of the blades and his unity. I didn't mention in Thriller Bark with Ryuma that actually playing a part, not just in his lineage and finding out who he is as a man, as a person, as an Asura, but also the Ryuma link here is that with Ryuma, and I mentioned the sacrifice aspect, but the whole Ryuma situation was him overcoming once again himself, him overcoming himself, him overcoming, and stepping towards closer to the divine. Uh, him fighting Brook, him fighting if you will, a yokai, kind of the symbolism there and whatnot. So in Wano, he overcomes that. He gets poisoned. He fights through. He has to fight without one of his blades in the challenge. He already was fighting Onimaru on the bridge, and Onimaru's hinting at like, "Yo, you're not fully understanding your relationship with your blades. You're still being somewhat selfish." We get to Onigashima, right? And we see what he's able. He's really tapping into his full divine state with, his cut, the Dead Man's Game, the cut of Kaido, him blocking Linlin and Kaido's combined attack, the Ocean Sovereignty, I believe it was called. Um, them being in hell, and it's interesting that I think it was 1009, Noraku and whatnot, and title Hell, right? And you deal with this whole situation and in his battle with King, and we can go in depth with the battle with King. But the point with King is that now, and then we see again 1033, one of my Mount Rushmore chapters for One Piece. We see the backstory, him understanding with the lineage, with the principles and everything, becoming one with the blade, truly releasing himself, and eventually him overcoming King. And it's interesting that his name is King. Oda again, intentionally doing that. And him dealing with Enma, Odin's blade, King of Hell, and we're presently now where he's literally battling death, where he's literally, I believe, unlocking his true state of Asura and more. So, we went through all of that. And Zoro's, like I said, it's as much obvious as it's not. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of philosophy behind this character. And it's beautiful, honestly. I've talked about his relationship with Luffy. I've talked about, his loyalty and much more in the past. But when you actually, from this lens, understand who he is, it's like, damn, Oda. Damn, Oda. It's like, whoa. It's really, really deep. Um, and so subtle with how he's written this character and how he's handled this character. You know, just just a swordsman. And I didn't, and I mentioned about, and I'll deal with this briefly with the because I know this video is going on long. You know, Dark King Silver's Rayleigh. Come on, man. The allusion to him having to go deeper. Hawkeye's, something beyond. You see how Shanks is. You see how Roger was. These swordsmen, Ryuma, the god of the sword. And another just hint that he has to become who he's always meant to be, which is an Asura. He has to fully embrace that side, and in that way not also lose himself. Because what you see with King in that fight, what you see with Mr. One, what you see with not Jabba, with Kaku, is that none of them, all of them did what they could, to do to win, sure, but in the process they lost who they were. And Zoro is his is the opposite, is becoming who he is. Now, I don't want them to fight Shiryu, but if they do fight, I'm pretty sure it's gonna even amp up this more. So, and anyways, unexpected one, like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts on this. What do you view about Zoro? What do you view about him being an Asura? What do you view about his divine journey of self-actualization? All right, y'all. Till next time, have a beautiful day, beautiful night. Peace. And Nami, when I drop the next one, Nami, the Weather Witch, should be